Thanks.
All right, I'm going to start this thing. So funny enough, I was talking to
Right.
Christy, and I started talking to Christy, and I was like, so the van, you want to talk about the van? And she goes, yeah, what do you think? I was like, a little creepy, a little creepy. Where were you going with it? And she goes, oh yeah, I super nerded out on these like old 1970s NASA themes that they had. Like a design style guide from NASA in the 70s where they had like all these like trench coats and weird vans. And she goes, I super nerded out on it and wanted to include it. And I was like, you be you, Christy. I'm not gonna be the guy that I'm not gonna be
Shuts that down. I think it's cool.
I know. She's like, I've never seen somebody so animated. Like, where did you get the inspiration to go into like 1970s NASA design style to redo Lattice? Welcome to Lattice.
I think
for
that
those of you
screaming
just,
t-shirt. We need a
oh my
t-shirt with the
gosh.
band.
I think we definitely do. It's so funny. I told her, I was like, that is going to become a meme. And she goes, I'm really hoping it does. It's like, I think you're getting where all this is going now. It's so funny, man. Oh, I'm going to let a couple more minutes trickle in. We're seeing people, join by the dozens right now. So that's good. This is my second Hypergraph hour in 2 weeks in a row. This is 2 Hypergraph, right? Was Jennico last week?
Yep. You've got
Jennico was last week, and yeah, but you used to do like 4 a month, so.
Until I was like slowly bleeding, and I was like, guys, I don't know if I can do this anymore and run a company. Like, there can only be one Jimmy Fallon in this world. I'm not going to try to take his job, Jeez. Man, jokes for days. All right. A couple more minutes, see people kind of coming in. It's kind of funny. Maybe I
cool
should
down
just...
and nap out there.
Yeah, it did a little bit. It rained for a couple days straight, which was awesome, man. I just like threw open all the doors and just let the rain come down over the woods, and yeah, it's really kind of romantic. You just need like a glass of scotch and I don't know, some better facial hair than what I have, and kind of have
a wash away your sins.
You just listen to the rain and reflect on, Constellation community. That's kind of what most of my reflections are these days. Welcome, Constellation community. I didn't see you guys there. All right. All right, let's kick this off. Welcome to Hypergraph Hour, episode 43. What we've all been waiting for is to talk about Lattice. And what you see here today is the first of many surprises that will come, which is the name change to Lattice Gateway. For everybody that's joining us for the first time, Hypergraph Hour is a time for us to divulge our roadmap, our design intentions, partnerships, strategy, thinking, mindset, and really kind of a way to educate our community and offer more transparency into what we're doing and why we're doing it. I'm excited about today. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes, months, maybe years, of really building up to this vision that we have. And it takes a while for every startup to really foresee a real vision come to life, right? And Lattice is a central piece of Constellation, and I think you're going to see that really come through today. Also joining me today is Michael Butcher, who is our head of DeFi and business development. Mike made his grand debut at High Def, where he hosted a panel on DeFi that I thought was one of the most fascinating, and looks at what the DeFi degens do all day. Which we're making a massive investment into at Constellation, and really kind of how Mike Butcher sees the whole world. Mike, you want to say hi before we kick things off?
Yeah, hi everybody. The degens, we chain smoke Newports and drink a lot of caffeine and move a bunch of money around on chain. That's wins and losses.
Solid entry, Mike. That's great. So little overview on Lattice. Off to the right, you kind of see some of our new design style that we're going for. So we're going to walk through the Lattice Gateway. We're renaming the Lattice to Lattice Gateway. Introduce you to our concept of token lifecycle, which really brings out our design choices and really vision for what this platform can become. Talk about some of the new features that are rolling out on September 27th. And then I'm going to walk through the various products of Lattice. Why I think this is important is because today we're going to be launching or distributing our white paper of Lattice 2.0 or Lattice Gateway, which really articulates about 6 key products that make up the token lifecycle on Lattice. And so today is kind of a way to give you a high-level summary of what is included in the white paper. And then obviously, we encourage everybody for deeper reading and exploration to really read through this white paper. I think this white paper is rather interesting because you're relaunching a white paper at a point of a company that's already built product. They already have circulating a token that's in circulation. And really it's about how do these pieces all fit together and provide benefits to users and the people that participate. So as I go through the different products, you're also going through this kind of token lifecycle journey of how a project and a user connect to create a vision around liquidity. And then at the very end, which you could all imagine, is that we're going to walk through not just the Lattice roadmap, but the Hypergraph roadmap, because I'm very excited to show how Hypergraph, Lattice, and Layer 1 application state channels all correlate together to really open up developer adoption. And then I've got a little surprise for us all after that. So I'm going to kick things off. Lattice Gateway, here's kind of our introduction to new branding for Lattice. And excuse me, what over the past several months, what I've really been able to reflect on with Lattice is that this is one of the most unique platforms in Web3 out there. It's taking together a lot of different products where separate entities, separate businesses have focused on one of those products. And instead, Lattice has really been kind of the foundation for a Web3 platform that acts as an introduction for people, like a welcome spot, a place for people to start to access Web3 projects, understand the basics of DeFi, understand different crypto projects without just going to a centralized exchange. And I think this is a massive key differentiator here, is that Lattice is not this just simply an exchange. After reflection over the first white paper that we wrote when we were writing about a DEX and improving AMMs, that the vision was rather more robust than it ever been there. With the metaverse coming out, with this kind of re-articulation of Web3, Lattice really took on as a gateway that did much more than just finding projects to speculate, but actually educated people on the nuances of building a cryptocurrency project while simultaneously taking a cryptocurrency project and walking them through the paths to price discoverability, creating liquidity, attracting community, all of these key stages that are really kind of the backbone to building a business in the Web3 world. And so what's interesting to me is that this platform is really becoming an educational outlet where people can do various activities beyond just speculate on a project, which is what centralized exchanges have done. And while centralized exchanges have been really good for marketing a new currency, they've kind of done a disservice in marketing the technology around these amazing projects that have come out into fruition. And so Lattice, to me, has really evolved and expanded its vision to being this gateway of Web3 projects to find discoverability, find users, to build passionate audiences and community members that can grow with them in their path to adoption. And so some of the key features that we're going to really talk about today that are coming out with Lattice V2 or Lattice 2.0, which correlates to Mainnet 2.0 at the Hypergraph, are talking through governance, really pushing governance into the forefront. This is a major push and investment that we're making into our community, as well as the way we see fit for the future of crypto. Node management, so evolving this concept of staking and treating everything like a node, as well as articulating key products, really going back to the basics, talking about 6 key products that make up the Lattice platform. So before we begin, and to get really the community to understand our thinking, and I wrote about this maybe a month ago around design choices. Why do we make these design choices when we structure a business? Every business evolves and takes different shapes and forms. Everybody pivots, everybody grows into where they find stickiness. And what our vision really was really started about 2 years ago when we started incubating or advising companies on the path to creating a token. And one of the visions that we coined here at Lattice and Constellation is this pathway to liquidity, or called the token lifecycle. And I think it's really important to understand this because so many DeFi projects and so many crypto projects have focused on creating one product and making this a business. And we're really creating a brand here at Lattice. We want to create a brand and a platform that really walks people through a one-stop shop to access a project at the different stages of their growth. And so I'll quickly kind of go through this vision, and you can once again read a lot more about this in the white paper that we're launching. But on the outer ring, you have this ideation phase. And what we did is we productized that ideation phase into what we call the flight program, where we could educate people on this path to creating a cryptocurrency, building out a community, and offering liquidity support as they grow over the next several years. And so not that everybody that comes into Lattice has to go through the flight program, but really that's at the ideation phase. And so at Lattice, we're both exploring projects that come in through the flight program, as well as companies that are outside of the Constellation flight or the Lattice flight program, but projects that are already on their way. They're already building momentum. We introduced Savannah as one of those examples. We're seeing a lot of these different companies already come in through inbound to us that aren't really equipped for the flight program, but they're ready to get started and access our community. And so that was kind of the outer ring. And as they come in, they enter the launch pad. This is their first touch point to engage with the community. This is their first point of liquidity and attracting liquidity through their offering. Are their tokenomics sound? Are they attractive? Do they have a marketable message? Are they technologically ready to release a demo at their early stage? And this really kind of amplifies fundraising. Lattice is already being seen as a badge that people wear when they want to go out and fundraise. They want to get approved to be listed on the Lattice Launchpad to begin their fundraising process. So it's been a fascinating shift to see what our brand recognition has done. As they go through the Launchpad, we introduced staking mechanism. This was a chance for projects to attract new liquidity and for key stakeholders to lock up their tokens while they focus on innovation, while they produce new results, while they focus on creating a more liquid market. And as tokens became more liquid and the marketing was in place and rollouts of technological advancements come through, what you have is an introduction to an exchange or liquidity. And through this, we kind of interchanged cross-chain swaps and bonding. But what we saw here is a need for people to create that exchange between different tokens. Where do they find themselves most attached to? Is it the GeoJam ecosystem? Is it Alchemy's ecosystem? Is it Constellation? So there was a need for further liquidity through some sort of exchange of tokens. And then furthermore, in our vision, what we're going to expand on later is this concept around bonding. And this concept around bonding really evolves the staking mechanism. What we saw with the early staking mechanisms is it created unprecedented inflation in different ecosystems. And while the APYs were attractive and they kept people close to the project, it wasn't healthy for the sustainability of the liquidity for the project. And so we've seen an evolution in this concept of staking called bonding, which we're excited to introduce at Lattice as well. And so this whole vision and this whole diagram really becomes the backbone of what our design choices are when we introduce a product at Lattice. And then we evolve and look at the user retention and usability of that product to really evolve the features and functionalities to really amplify the growth for that product. So what I'm really proud to announce is next week, a day before Mainnet 2.0 and the Genesis block at the Hypergraph, is that we're going to roll out Lattice 2.0. So in kind of good humor, next week is going to be probably one of the busiest weeks over at the Constellation team, but we're really excited to do this. And I think what is very strong here is that you see multiple teams and companies all coming together under one roof, doing multiple releases. So we have separate teams, separate development teams that are able to actually push out different products and make this whole vision around this ecosystem really come to life. It's a fascinating achievement. This is something that we've worked on for several years to be able to work in parallel and work in stride to deliver key products and functionality. So let me highlight some of the new features that are going to be that are being laid out on 9/27 next week. We're going to start introducing governance with the veLTX. So users will be able to lock up LTX to get veLTX. Once again, I'm going to go through this with Mike Butcher later on in the deck. So don't feel like you have to understand all this. But governance is the cornerstone of where all blockchain projects are going, with regulation coming down, with new usability, with total locked up value and ecosystems. Governance is really holding more of these projects accountable than they ever have in the future, and it needs to be the cornerstone to every project. And this is something we've spent months designing. We'll also be articulating the value of veLTX as we start to ramp up governance. How do you do proposals? What type of airdrops and reward structures can you get? This to me is one of the most exciting pieces that we have coming out, because it really starts to paint a foundation for the Hypergraph governance. The next major feature or product that we're releasing is an upgrade to the staking mechanism, which we're calling the Node Manager. And the Node Manager product really takes this vision that everything is a node. So you'll be set up with a dashboard to manage DTM, soft nodes, test nodes, and so many other different features that will be considered as nodes. And then the final feature that we're dropping is advancing the launchpad to include LTX and veLTX. And this is also now going to be feeless by initiating it as soft staking, so state tokens will stay in the wallet. And this really is going to improve by tying the launchpad to the veLTX. This is really going to improve the amount of projects that come into our ecosystem and align incentives with the projects that are getting listed and people that are coming to back them, along with governance. So as I mentioned, the first order of business was a rebrand. We did a rebrand, we did a facelift, we updated the name. You're going to see a complete different UI, complete different UX that really kind of modernizes everything to articulate this customer journey. A lot of Lattice was kind of a Frankenstein platform that we saw a need to really connect all the dots and allow users to connect all the dots so that it was an effective gateway for people to manage nodes, manage their rewards, while also being able to discover new projects and those projects be able to tap into that user base. So this is, I think it's one of the most beautiful platforms I've seen out there that that evolves a lot of what we've seen in the DeFi space in some of these platforms that are out there. So to start to walk through the major products of Lattice, the 6 key products, I'm going to quickly walk through kind of where we are with the 6 key products and how 5 of the 6 each have an MVP to date. I think one of the important things that this white paper does is that it shows kind of why we did what we did. Why did we launch this product? Why are all these things out there? And instead, it really kind of makes it more comprehensive. It makes our ecosystem comprehensive. You can start to understand how a project becomes our customer for their entire lifetime. While these, for you as a backer of Lattice, come in and you can see that these projects are not here just to come and go. They're actually here for the lifetime of their project and to support you. And this whole white paper really articulates 6 key products that we put into this platform to be one of the most comprehensive Web3 gateways or portals out there. Many people know the flight program coming under the Constellation umbrella. We're shifting that over to the Lattice umbrella because it helps us complete that customer journey lifecycle. So the flight program really is the first stage of our products. It's our first product in many ways, which is for emerging Web3 products. As many of you know, we saw about 70 completed projects go through the program, several of them pitched at high def, outstanding projects that are really kind of evolving the vision of Web3, the capabilities of blockchain technology. Where the flight program is going in the future, as we're starting to collect more interest, we've already received, I think, over 250,000 applications for this next flight program, which is absolutely astonishing, is that we're really kind of helped with the ideation stage in the past. And we helped alongside fundraising when the company had their tokenomics. They really kind of sat through things. We helped them, guide them through the fundraising. But the key differentiator in the future of the flight program, and with state channel support and L0 token support, is that we're going to make it a priority for each of those projects to start minting L0 tokens or start designing their state channels that plug into the Hypergraph. And so this now becomes more of our first tranche of building out our developer ecosystem. The next stage and our next product at Lattice is the Launchpad. As I mentioned, once a project goes through their ideation phase, they get their ducks in a row, they start their fundraising effort, they need to tap into a community. They need to align incentives. They need to see the market viability by coming to a Launchpad. A Launchpad is really not just a place for fundraising, but a way for people to build their community and test out their messaging, their marketability, and they start to create that kind of investor database, if you will. And so with the Launchpad, to date, we've seen about 6 completed projects that really act as our MVP in many ways, right? We got an idea of what is the business model around Launchpad. For example, with the flight program, we took about 1 to 2% of a token supply as an exchange for going through the program and receiving that knowledge base. For the Launchpad, we really didn't take a fee. And so this actually gave us a chance to see what would be a good value exchange, not just for us, but also for our community. And so now the Launchpad will be introducing fees that correlate with the flight program or that come in inbound, where we structure a fee structure that we can now give to veLTX holders. So this is a really important development that now veLTX holders can participate in the business side of things that Constellation and Lattice have been able to excel at. This is also going to allow us to really bring in more projects. Once they see how they can more deeply align with governance in the community, it's going to be an incentive for them to come into the Launchpad in a more programmatic way, where the fee sharing structure is between Constellation and the community. So this is a pretty big advancement that I think is going to attract a lot more liquidity into our space, as well as a lot more projects into our business funnel. The third product at Lattice is the Node Manager. As I mentioned before, this was the staking platform. And what on the previous version, you saw soft node staking, you saw regular staking, you saw DTMs, where we're basically combining all of that into this concept that really anything is a node, or as the team put down there, anything is node worthy. And I'll go into that in a second. But really, we kind of see nodes as something that contribute resources to the network or offer resources to the network. So we really evolved this vision that really anything is a node. I think I even wrote about it at one time, like, I am a node, right? You see these individuals take a lot of pride and ownership in being able to dedicate resources to the network and be able to participate in our decentralized infrastructure. And we've seen a lot of success with the Node Manager. And our MVP to really kind of clear things up have been understanding the reward structures around the DTM, creating a dashboard around the DTM so you can monitor what rewards you've accrued. But the most successful program to date has been the DAG soft node program, where we've seen about 50% of circulating supply locked up every month, where everybody comes to Lattice to lock up their DAG to receive rewards. And so with the new node manager, we start to aggregate all these different programs under one roof where everybody can see what type of rewards they're earning across their different type of nodes. One of the unique things that we're evolving in this vision are creating programmatic bounties around a node. So one of the capabilities that we've created is that we can take any sort of verifiable API and create a node around it. So if you wanted to create a campaign around, say, a Twitter marketing campaign, we could actually connect Twitter APIs to create a node and reward people for verifiable outcomes around marketing bounties. This is also going to correlate around any data source. You can imagine that we can take any data source and API, register that to an individual, create a campaign around it, and be able to distribute rewards based off of the data that you're contributing back to the network. This ultimately kind of opens the gate for node campaigns. So projects may come in and spin up a different node or marketing or programmatic API in some way to create and incentivize veLTX holders to participate and provide liquidity or engagement across their node campaign. I think this is a really fascinating evolution in product that I'm going to bring to light in a few slides more around how we're creating multiple products that ultimately become state channels. This is really the foundation for us to create state channels at a very early development stage. Now, without further ado, the next big reveal is talking through governance in veLTX. This is a big shift that we've had over the past 4 months and how we're thinking about the future of DeFi and the future governance of Lattice, as well as the Constellation community. And one of the big things that we've been really monitoring over the past couple of years is the regulatory scrutiny that has intensified across various projects in the DeFi space. People that have been good actors and bad actors, how governance is really shifting the focus, but also being paramount to the development, the exponential development, and the exponential value of the DeFi use case. And so in many ways, we want to be on the right side of history. We want to follow regulatory scrutiny, but we don't want to hinder innovation. And that's been a really tough line for us to walk down. But by us introducing veLTX, I think we're actually painting the picture for an amazing future. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mike Butcher to kind of talk through the changes of governance, why we decided to go with veLTX, and how it's going to work.
Yeah, thank you for all that, Ben, and give you a little break here. So the
Thanks,
VE
buddy.
model may be new to most of you. It's become pretty common in the DeFi space across different ecosystems like ETH and Arbitrum. And we've seen a lot of projects who already had established token distribution and different emission systems kind of switch to this vote escrow model. And the reason is really it comes down to game theory. So when you're looking at like desirable outcomes, right, for both the user's perspective and the project itself's perspective, there's clear things that you want to incentivize and things that you want to reward. And so what veLTX really is an expression of that. So from the user standpoint, right, it's most beneficial for the user to have say-so in the direction of the actual product, therefore governance, but it's also in their best interest to earn these various fees that are generated. And so how do you measure who deserves what in an ecosystem fairly, right? And well, in other systems, like proof of stake and other things, you kind of attach monetary value to this incentive. So to make the playing field a bit more fair for those who may not have as much financial backing to create large positions, but may have more longer term incentive or alignment with the actual ecosystem, we've created this tiered structure, which is very common in VE tokenomics. And essentially what it looks like is locking LTX for various periods of time will generate different amounts of veLTX as a result, which this slide demonstrates here perfectly. And so the game theory here really is we want to incentivize the optimal outcome for the product, which is the most amount of LTX locked up or removed from the ability to be sold or dumped on the market. And also align rewards with the people who are trusting us the most or trusting the protocol most in the longest time frame. So if you look, there's like a minimum of 6-month lock, right, which will generate, you know, whatever 0.1 veLTX for every 1 LTX locked up. But in the most optimal setting, right, you're getting 1 LTX locked up for every 1 veLTX, and that's in a 3-year lock period. Basically, what we're trying to incentivize here is the people who are the most aligned with us in the vision and the kind of direction of this product receive the most rewards from the fees that are generated versus those who may just be kind of fly by night or dipping their toe in. That's kind of the idea behind the VE system. And so an example of that could look like, say you have 1,000 LTX, right? And you have 2 people with 1,000 LTX, and one user is curious, but not too sold on the whole vision or sold on the team behind Lattice. And so they say, we're going to lock for 6 months, right? We'll give it a try. Well, that's going to result in them essentially holding 100 veLTX, right? With their 1,000 LTX locked. Versus this other person has 1,000 LTX and he goes, you know, really love the team. We love this vision. We're here for, you know, infinity. I'm never selling my bags or whatever the case may be. So he locks his 1,000 LTX for 3 years. Well, he will have 1,000 veLTX. And essentially the way the fee distribution works and also voting weight or voting power works, it's all based on the number of veLTX that you hold. So you have 2 people in this example who have the same financial amount of LTX held, but 2 different weights in terms of how many fees they're actually earning, and also how much sway they have in their voting power. So that's kind of the general premise behind VE tokenomics, and the reason that we've implemented it for this system is I believe it makes sense. We have a few products, and you know these products all generate fees in various ways, and so figuring out a fair way to distribute those, just it's a viable system. So.
Mike, maybe you want to talk a little bit what you've seen in the space and why you've come to this conclusion and what's worked and what hasn't worked out there.
Sure. So I like to point to Sushi Swap. Everybody's pretty familiar with that if they've used AMMs and different things, and they have this token X Sushi. And of course, Sushi Swap has various competitors, right? You have Uniswap, Curve, Balancer, you have all these different other AMMs. And when we look at which tokens or which governance tokens are really earning both the most financial incentive, I'll call it, but also like the most valuable governance voting power, it's systems that have something with VE attached to it typically. And the reason for that, we can go hours into the game theory on it, but it's really about having tokenomics that are designed to fulfill very specific goals, right? So I use sushi as an example because the sushi token ultimately fails in comparison to like something like Uniswap or Curve in the terms of like market cap or general users or holders, even though it is a major exchange with a lot of brand notability, right? Notoriety. The reason for that is because they've cycled through so many different teams over the years, and they've built so many different products over, you know, the course of the life of the company or DAO. And it's kind of left various products not adding real value to the token holders. And I think a really recent example of this that you guys can go and look at is a Sushi X Swap, right? Which that's their first cross-chain AMM, and it supports 7 chains. It's all EVM compatible chains. You're looking at Ethereum, Polygon, Optimism, Arbitrum, etc. And it's actually had no effect on the rewards that the X Sushi holders, their governance token, are actually accruing. 3 months ago, the average APR for X Sushi was about 7.5% or something around there. And as of a month ago, after the launch of this product, it's actually at 6-point-something%. So you've actually had an overall decrease with this new cross-chain AMM product. Of course, they have a bunch of other products as well, like Kashi and Bento Box and different things. And so the systems I've seen work the best are always systems that are very focused. And with LTX, it's no different, right? Like stepping into the product and kind of looking at current distribution and all the different things that were going on, it became very clear that there was there was value being generated from different actions in the ecosystem, but there wasn't equal value distribution happening as a result of those. And what I mean by that is you had, say, companies doing the launchpad, doing the incubation, right, which would generate revenue for a Constellation team and for the treasury. But often it left LTX holders kind of not receiving that value. Meanwhile, the LTX holders, if the company ended up going to the launchpad, put up money and they purchase these tokens, et cetera. So kind of closing that gap and including the LTX holders in the actual value exchange and like loop that we're creating here was super important to me. And so in my mind, this was the clearest way to kind of approach that situation, which is, rather than just having these fees go to a treasury, which is very common, right? Every launchpad's like this. Just there's no like clear value give back. It was just an answer to these problems. And so I asked myself also, what is like the most common problems or common talking points around the LTX token? And one of the main things was fee sharing. It always comes up as like one of the biggest value props to the holders is like this ideation of future fee sharing that they're going to be able to participate in. And looking at this model, it's kind of like, well, we could have that now, right? With the different things that are going on. So let's go ahead and introduce that and kind of make it a bit more fair and more inclusive in that sense. Does that kind of answer the?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Mike. That's a great transition into some of the veLTX reward structure. Cool.
Yeah, so the reward structure, there's a few areas, right, that we can generate fees for the veLTX holders. The most readily available and like accessible one, of course, is the Launchpad project tokens, which we've already seen revenue generated from in the past through the various products that have gone up there. And we have a pipeline of products ready to go up in the future. So this is very kind of predictable fee generation, which is really valuable in my opinion. You can see it says here in the text, like, for example, in the flight program, project would give us 2% of their token supply to Lattice for attendance. So 50% of the 2% would be 1%, may be eligible to veLTX when a project goes through Launchpad. These are massive airdrops. If you're talking about 1% of a token's like entire supply being airdropped to a very condensed pool of holders or lockers, these are sizable rewards. Like, these aren't just like talking about very, here's 1,000 tokens of this or whatever. It's like, these are like, it's in the pie chart, it's a visible it's a visible piece. So that's huge to me. The other thing is staking and node programs, and this is important as we roll out additional products in the future and as other companies add products to Lattice and governance can vote on these different additions and inclusions. These all generate fees in various ways, right? So bounty campaigns may be able to introduce fees at some point if they're successful and you're having a lot of value. Bonding also in the future could have various fees attached, kind of like the Olympus Pro or bond protocol model. The cross-chain swaps very clearly can generate fees. As we've seen with Sushi, is it as crazy an amount of rewards that the Launchpad project tokens distribution may be? Probably not, but it still generates fees. And all of these different products combined create a very steady stream of fees that the veLTX holders could potentially, have a stake in. And I think that's very important moving forward for all products in Constellation and in crypto in general, is to have that inclusion. It's an owner's economy, right? So we want to have shared ownership and participation and really making your voice heard, where it matters.
Thanks, Mike. Which really leads us into a lot of our design choices around liquidity pools and cross-chain swaps, which was the initial white paper that Lattice wrote. And a little over 6 months ago, we launched our MVP with a third party called Exelix for swaps. They supported all of our ecosystems. They integrated our ecosystem tokens. And it was a chance for us to really kind of see what type of user would actually be using a DEX or swaps. So Exelix wasn't really a true DEX. It was actually an aggregate of different centralized exchange listing. But this really gave us insight onto who our user was, how we need to shift our projects into different liquidity pools, and ultimately a more mature state of their liquidity program. And so that was a really strong move for us that I was really happy with, because we got a real insight on what kind of user interface that we wanted to do, also what features and functionalities we wanted to see out of the cross-chain swap that we wanted to introduce. And so this becomes the fifth product in the Lattice. I was trying to think of how many products we've gone through at this point. The fifth product at Lattice, which is really focusing on the need for liquidity. This is a paramount piece to our ecosystem. And it really got started with the veLTX swap. Where this is now going, and with our choices behind the scenes to mitigate against regulatory scrutiny, we've decided to separate the DEX entirely and really integrate it, and working in parallel with a third-party group, where we'll ultimately create a new tokenomics around the DEX and airdrop it to existing LTX holders. This does not mean you'll be diluted with LTX. This really means about having a tokenomics that are designed specifically for that product, as we are doing with the other products at Lattice. And I think, to Mike's point, we don't want to dilute ourselves in the value of having too many products and too many utilities for one token, but actually separate those things out. And so what you'll see is a new white paper, new tokenomics and emissions that really benefit LTX. And this ultimately has the goal of benefiting LTX holders in a much more substantial way than over diversifying one token for multiple utilities. And so this is a really powerful piece, and I'll articulate more on the roadmap as I get through the other products. But I will also say that by separating this out, by starting with veLTX and us proving to regulators that this is going to be decentrally built and is being built in parallel with the Hypergraph, it actually has allowed us to secure a US legal memorandum for us to list on tier 1 centralized exchanges. This is a really big value proposition, as everybody knows what it could benefit to the Lattice community by us getting listed on a tier 1 central exchange. So I'm really proud to announce that I actually have that US legal memorandum. It's about 37 pages, and it's very extensive, and it walks through this entire Lattice 2.0 launch and Lattice Gateway. So I'm very excited about this, and as what it's going to be able to do for us for the viability in the future of this entire project. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about the sixth product and bonding? Because I think this really kind of drives home the whole message on how we're creating products around the liquidity token lifecycle.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the other sort of pain points that we identified in the incubator that had existed and that we've been constantly improving upon was post-TGE support and different products that would keep projects as customers of Lattice for life of the project, but also give like clear value exchange back to the project. One of pretty much every startup in crypto that has a token, biggest pain points is retaining liquidity for their token. And so some things that have happened on Ethereum as evolutions of kind of the DeFi yield farming narrative, and you had pool 1, pool 2 farm. We talked about this back on the DeFi panel. But one of the innovations that came out was from a DAO called Olympus DAO. And they kind of created this system known as bonding in crypto, which is where rather than just pure inflation for renting your LP or like additional liquidity from your community, you could actually facilitate equal value exchanges to boost protocol-owned liquidity. And the difference between protocol-owned liquidity and community-provided liquidity is protocol-owned liquidity is permanent, right? Like if you own it in your treasury, it's just there. There's no need to worry about people unwinding the position or leaving, and then resulting in less liquidity. It also offsets costs of having different market makers, right? This is an ongoing expense that in most cases for many new startups is unattainable, or it's just too costly, right? It's the difference oftentimes between hiring an efficient market maker or hiring a really qualified developer to help build their product. So with bonding, it allows the project to plan in their tokenomics and in their TGE strategies, lifelong things that they can continuously build liquidity. And in doing so, of course, keeping money in the Constellation ecosystem. As the mainnet 2.0 deploys, and as other developer groups and whatnot start to really build a lot of stuff on Constellation, we're going to see a lot of things happen, right? There's going to be a lot of project. There's going to be, money coming in from Solana, money coming in from Ethereum. Like, users are going to start migrating funds around, and really being able to capture and retain that on our chain is crucial for the longevity of both Constellation ecosystem, but also for Lattice, for keeping those fees rolling, if you will. This creates lifelong customers out of what would have been just one time, here, raise some capital from us, do an airdrop, and be on your merry way. Now we can really retain them and keep the value going on both sides. So projects are getting good value and users are getting good value, and yeah, Constellation ecosystem in whole is getting good value.
So maybe
here's
want to walk through
bonding.
the quick example.
Should probably explain that. For sure. So bonding in crypto is slightly different than bonding in like traditional finance. Pretty similar premise, but ultimately what it is, for those of you who are familiar with traditional yield farming, which is where you essentially add liquidity to a DEX. So you would take, DAG/USDC and you would put that on Uniswap or whatever. Then you would take that LP token that's generated from that liquidity addition to whatever the website is that's offering whatever farming reward for doing that action. So you'd stake your LP, and then you would start to earn a stream of rewards. That would be like your yield, right, in yield farming. Well, the problem with this system, as I pointed out, is inflation on the protocol level. And once the token inflation becomes too high, you start to run into decreasing price. Once the price starts decreasing, rewards start depleting. Once rewards start depleting, users remove their liquidity and go to the next project, leaving the project with a crashed token price and no liquidity at the end of it. So the equal value exchange here is projects know they have to incentivize, because it's a competitive ecosystem, users to give them liquidity. And users know they're in a value position of, they don't want the token that they're farming to be completely depleted or crashed. So what an example of bonding would be, say Lattice wants to get additional LTX token liquidity on Uniswap or whatever the exchange. Just use Uniswap as an example. So they could put up a bonding campaign of, say, $100,000 of LTX tokens in exchange for, say, $90,000 of their LP token in LTX/USDC. Now, we're taking a 10% haircut up front, right? And I know haircut's a funny word, but taking a 10% haircut up front, on the actual LTX token inflation. But what's happening is the $90,000 of LP that Lattice would then collect for issuing these rewards is with the protocol forever. So 10%, $10,000 in this case, is a much easier impact to absorb and control than something like a 200% APR, that will last for 3 months. And then LTX is worth nothing and we have no liquidity at the end of it. This is something that we can do for life of the project and control the amount of inflation that we're emitting, and give the users an opportunity to arbitrage. So they're able to actually transfer in LP tokens for greater value of LTX token over a short period of time, typically, anywhere from 7 to 30 days. And so you create this, again, equal value exchange. You're solving the same issue where you're still able to get your yield as a user, but then the protocol is also able to taper inflation and build up long-term liquidity, so that in the future, the next tranche of users, or as the product grows, you can sustain that market.
Thanks, Mike. This is all articulated in the white paper, and we'll be creating separate documents to really articulate this, especially as we get closer to unveiling the product. So to round things home today, going through the roadmap. So what we did at Constellation and Lattice is we built one giant roadmap so that everybody could see how products correlate to unlocking features and solutions, as well as developer adoption. I'm really proud of what this team has put together because you're working across different departments to really come together with multiple roadmaps that correlate and coincide with each other, while also correlating and coinciding with third-party developer adoption, or the L1 state channel. So let me kind of walk you through the hypergraph. You remember several months ago, Michael Brand, our COO, articulated the progress that we're making on the path to mainnet 2.0. And so if you look under phase 1, we're really there today. Next week, we launch mainnet 2.0 on September 28th, and we do a network reboot with the new Genesis block, which introduced new features, along with feature parity with mainnet 1.0 and the DAG state channel. As things kind of settle down, I call this the breathing period, where we let the network stabilize, we let it settle, we build awareness around it. We enter phase 2, which we've in some ways already started in phase 1, which is around developer support. So several weeks ago, we launched developer tooling and documentation, where people could start to build on our testnet. But with phase 2, we're going to introduce Constellation SDK and L0 tokens. So this is our first tranche of real developer adoption to make it easier for developers to build applications on Constellation. A lot of the early developers that you'll see will start to come in here and start to build their own L0 token, start to build their own state channels. Groups like Alchemy, GeoJam, that have already been behind the scenes. I've talked to numerous other projects that are already ready to go and are already designing their state channel based on the documentation, and they're waiting for Constellation SDK. This will also be focusing on the Rosetta implementation at the hypergraph level, which really puts us on the standard of really every major blockchain ecosystem. As we get further to phase 3, this is really around scalable developer support, or I define this as like mainstream developer adoption. We'll start introducing DeFi and standards that people can easily pull on as frameworks to design their applications and state channels that are maybe for more later developers. They're not ready to dive into the Constellation ecosystem, but now they are, because it's more fully baked, right? This will also include something called an ACI registry, an L0 executor layer that will allow us to enable cross-chain data operations, or as cross-chain swaps, as you know, while also creating the ability to support liquidity pools. So phase 3 is really more around the complex developer support, where phase 2 really initiates the process for designing these massive use cases and state channels. So when you look at the hypergraph roadmap on the top, this then correlates to the Lattice roadmap as well. Lattice, you could see, is like the first developer in our ecosystem that's laying the foundation and helping design the frameworks that other projects can use. So for example, in phase 1, we're releasing 5 products at Lattice, right? Each of these products have the ability to have their own state channel. We have our own team in-house that's designing state channels that are oriented around each of the 5 and 6 products that we're building at Constellation. The reason we say 5 is because the flight program really won't have a state channel, but all of the other products will have its own programmatic aspect that creates a state channel and ties to the hypergraph foundation. In phase 2, as we've already entered into, and we are this is kind of a rolling thing happening right now, is that we've secured a US legal memorandum. This is giving us the ability to build out and design a DEX with a third party. We've already started doing this in the past. We've been doing this. Now we're correlating it to features and functionalities at the hypergraph level. What are the needs and dependencies at the hypergraph level to really open up cross-chain data operations? As we enter into phase 3, those more advanced features will then become integrated with the DEX and with Lattice as well. So all of this design has been going on, and it's really being done in parallel with separate teams with the hypergraph developer and protocol group that really articulated the capabilities last week, and you'll actually hear from them next week. So when you go to the very bottom, go ahead, Mike, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the select third party thing if you'd like.
Yeah,
just
sure.
give a bit more kind of clarity to the whole picture. And if anybody's angry about this decision, they can point blame at me. The main issue with trying to build a DEX without a very, very specific token design around it is it ultimately fails. And what I mean by that is, sure, it can facilitate swaps, but the main objective of any decentralized exchange is to attract and retain liquidity so that it is chosen by both projects, users, and aggregators to facilitate swaps. There are thousands of DEXs that exist. It's not a very complex thing to actually build. It's just, it's very specific in what works and what doesn't work. And this is a great example of why I use Sushi, and I'll go back to that very briefly, as almost a failed experiment. And look, the Sushi team's great. Like, and which one you're pointing to kind of, I guess, depends. They're all great. All the past Sushi teams are great, and the future Sushi teams I'm sure will be great. But the problem, like I said, is like too many products and not a clear vision. They've been missing that head chef, and that's why you see on their messaging how much they're willing to pay for a head chef. I think they put up like a $10 million offer for someone to come in with a very clear vision, like really to drive that product, versus something like Uniswap, who had first mover advantage and didn't even start out with a token. They've been able to retain that through constant innovation, but also through this like token around their governance. I think Curve is an even better example of like a token and design that really attracts and retains liquidity and then monetizes the voting power behind that. So a DEX on Constellation as like a primary tool that is absolutely needed and will be created and is being worked on as we speak, has to be very, very, very well thought out in terms of token design for liquidity attraction retention. And I will say, the Lattice supporters and holders will not be forgotten about for whatever the new design is, right? And Lattice, of course, plays into all the future DEXs on Constellation, because there will be more than one as you know, other developer teams join. The way I see cross-chain swaps functioning on Lattice is really more of like an aggregator exchange, which realistically will generate more value in terms of fee sharing for the token holders than natively trying to support all of the different ecosystems that exist, all of those different liquidity pools, trying to compete with all these other exchanges. So just to shed a little bit of light there, I know it's a big touch point, so just wanted to give some insight.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. And you know, to round it out, a lot of what we're building right now is also in stride with L1 state channels. So we picture kind of the Lattice team as well as the other third parties building out certain pieces of Lattice as really kind of their own state channels. But they don't have an intimate touch point with the Constellation core. And so we do this all kind of in with the third rounding element, which is L1 state channels, and providing early developer support that we're already doing at phase one, whereas we kind of migrate to the right to mainstream developer adoption and providing more tools, functionalities that really unlock all the 70 companies that are building at Constellation or that went through the flight program that are coming on the launch pad. Each one of them have their own different requirements, much like Lattice cross-chain swaps or the other 4 or 5 Lattice products. They all have their own dependencies and needs and their own tooling capabilities. So as we kind of roll out the next phases on the Hypergraph, this will further allow us to convert a lot of those projects into builders and state channels at on the Constellation ecosystem. And so as you follow along and you see kind of new functions and features and functionalities roll out, this is going to allow us to bring in new applications that have different use cases across the board. And we're having conversations all the time about different state channels that can be built that can't be built on other chains, but can be built here. They all kind of roll into different points in the developer adoption curve. So a large roadmap that really is comprehensive between the Hypergraph, Lattice as its own platform with multiple state channels and business models, as well as L1 state channels. So please screenshot this. I think this is a very powerful piece that's really helped us kind of navigate the company. So as I round out the day, one more thing I wanted to say is that we're really looking ahead. We see this kind of adoption with new features, functionality, developers, tools, documentations as this opportunity to build out our developer ecosystem. We're seeing developers come to us from other ecosystems where they're not happy with other major L1s and blockchains and wanting to start building on us. Well, this is the time that we really want to exponentially expand. We have more people coming into the protocol team. We're interviewing more people on the protocol side. We're building more people out on the Lattice side. We're actually running in parallel multiple different roadmaps in Stride. And so what we're really excited to announce is that in the next couple of weeks, we're going to open up the doors for Constellation's first round of equity funding and opening that up to our community through a Reg CF offering. So non-accredited or accredited investors can really participate in the backing and owning a piece of Constellation Inc. As we build out our developer ecosystem. So more information is going to come on that. You'll be able to see this in the next couple of weeks. We'll have more details, what this means for people, what they will be entitled to, and how to access the round. Mike Butcher, can't thank you enough today. There was so much today. Did we even do this in time? 2 minutes over. I think there's a lot of we have a lot of AMAs going on over the course of the next week to really dive into each of these products, talk about what we mean. Next week, we have the rollout of a new website, the new platform. We've got Mainnet 2.0 going on. Really a lot going on behind the scenes. So thank you all for chiming in today and happy to answer questions later on. Thank you all.